everybody. My name is Laura Presley, and welcome to my presentation on my artist of choice for our artist presentations. Today, I'm going to be talking about the 18th century artist, Marie-Denise Villers. So to begin, we're going to discuss some background on the artist. We're going to talk about her family, about her education, and we're going to talk about two different paintings. The first in particular, a portrait of Charlotte Duval d'Angnes. And one thing I like to note is that Villers is a trained portrait artist. This is one of her studies from 1855 called Study of a Woman. Now, to get into some background on Villers, she was born in 1774 in Paris, France, and passed away in that same city in 1821. She was a part of the neoclassicism movement, and she happened to study under the neoclassicist artist Jacques-Louis David and also Girardin. Also, interesting fact, she happened to marry an architect named Michael Jean-Maximilien Villers. Little is known about Villers, but we do know some little fun facts. Her maiden name was Lemoyne, and she went by Nisa a lot of her life. She also came from a family of artists, her sisters and cousin even, and parents. So just a reminder of Jean-Louis David and one of his very famous works from 1784. She does not happen to do a lot of history painting. She tries, and we'll get into that, but this kind of brings us back to what a history painting looks like and the works of Jean-Louis David. So back to the family, Villers has some notable relatives. We have her parents, Charles Lemoyne and Marie Anna Roussel, is the wife and mom. And then we have the sisters of Villers. We have Marie Elizabeth Gabot and Marie Victor Lemoyne. And then a distant cousins of hers, Jean Elizabeth Chardin. So the sister, Marie Victoria, she happened to paint this work called Interior of a Woman Painting's Atelier. And I bring this up because it does a couple things. It kind of showcases what it would look like for women in this day to paint and to be artists. And also, the two women in this painting are the sisters, Marie Victoria and Marie Elizabeth. Villers herself is not in this work, but it's fun to see what this might look like. And this painting also happens to be in the Met, in a different area, but in the Met Museum, like the famous portrait that we just saw at the beginning of Villers. So, to talk more about the sisters' work, this is Marie Victor Lemoyne's A Young Woman Leaning on an Edge of a Window. This is the second sister, a self-portrait. And this is the distant cousin, Jean-Elizabeth Chardin, portrait of Madame Villot. Now, going back to this painting, it is very mysterious for this reason. It has a history of mistaken attribution, and it actually was believed to be Jean-Louis David's painting for a very long time. So, to get into the history, after its debut in the Paris Salon, it happened to belong to a family, the Val Ognes family, and their private collection for generations. At this point, it was believed to be Jean-Louis David's. This painting was acquired by the Met Museum in 1917 under the impression that it belonged to David, or that it was created by David. Getting into some change in authorship, in 1951, Charles Sterling, an art historian, questioned the painting's authorship, partially because Jean-Louis David was not in the Salon in 1801. So Sterling asserts that a female artist, Constance Marie Champetier, may have painted it because she was in the salon at that time. Now, this new attribution was accepted by the Met at this time. So Sterling retired from museum work and began teaching at the Institute of Fine Arts in New York City. Now we get new authorship by a PhD student from this school, Margaret Oppenheimer. And this student, Oppenheimer, happened to figure out that Sterling was wrong, and in spite of less than 15% of the artists showing in 1801 being female, she discovered it was a female artist, not Charpentier, but it was Villers, and Villers happened to paint Charlotte Duval d'Aignes. So, before this happened, the Met was confused, and it decided that there was no attribution to the painting in 1980. It was just called Young Woman Drawing. And then with the work of Oppenheimer, it got new authorship and new attribution. And now the Met Museum accepts it to this day. So if we take a look at this painting, we can learn a lot of different things about what was happening at the culture of the time and some other interesting things to note. So the subject, Charlotte Duval d'Aignes, was an art student alongside Villers. Some scholars have suggested this work is about sexual anxiety. However, Bridget Quinn, author of the book Broad Strokes, suggests that this is actually speaking about artistic anxiety. For most female art students at the time, giving into romantic love meant giving up on painting. In Marie-Denise Villers' portrait, what separates the interior of the Louvre, where she is sitting, from the outside world of the romantic and domestic life is a broken pane of glass. Charlotte is an object lesson in this case. She's a woman, like many others, that gave up her dream and success as a professional artist when she became a wife, which is no surprise because this was the priority of 18th century women to take care of their husband and children. But it's interesting, though, because Villers was not like this. Villers, an artist at this time, was it was kind of incredible. Villers was an artist at this time as the revolution, post-revolution, was actually quite conservative. So many women painters did not achieve the success and notoriety of their male counterparts, although she tried. Villers was married for 5 years when she painted this portrait, so she continued working even though she was married. However, she did not have any children. But her husband, by all accounts, supported her career and her ambition. Villers' last painting was dated in 1814, and she died 7 years later. Now, another thing to look at with this artwork is showcasing the style of post-revolution women. So we can see the hairstyle from this catalog here, the beautiful draping of the hair on either side of the face, and then the rest of it pinned up really high. This was a very common style and popular one at the time. And then if we look at the dress, it was the height of fashion for this period. It was made from a white cotton fabric, and early global capitalism brought this style from India, where it originated, to France. Even if we look at the figures in the background, we can see that the young man is wearing this style from this catalog, very popular and cutting edge at the time. Now, all this is going to tie together with representations of women and fashion. We see a second painting of Villers, one of the very few that she has, called A Study of a Woman After Nature. Now, there's some things to note in this image. We've got accessories, so a veil, shoes, and gloves. One thing to note is that the veil is a luxury item and was very popular in French fashion. One thing about this veil is that it speaks to the agency of the wearer. She is half covered, and that would be a very taboo thing. Usually if you wear this veil, you'd want to be fully covered. So we have kind of partial access to her, but also not, because half of herself is covered up. It speaks a little bit to chastity as well, covering yourself up for modesty's sake, but we kind of don't know because she is half covered. She looks at us with one eye uncovered and one eye covered. Now, another interesting thing is that this is contemporary dress, like we talked about with the veil. The shoes and the gloves are also from the time. And she's performing an ordinary action as well, just tying her shoe and staring at the viewer. But if you take a look at the composition, and if you look at maybe other works from antiquity, we have an antique prototype of a woman kind of morphed with a modern woman. She's very close to the picture plane. It kind of reminds me of a Madonna and Child, just without the child. And these two ideas combine classicism with extreme fashionability. You're taking the classic archetype of a woman from antiquity, and you're merging it with the contemporary dress, fashion, maybe even the activities of a modern woman. And this was Villers' take on a history painting. By combining those ideas and nodding back to antiquity, she was able to elevate this painting in the eyes of the Academy at the time, so that she could be a part of that history painting club. So that is my presentation on Villers. These are my references, and I hope you enjoyed this discussion.